Welcome to our deep dive into the world of narcissism.
Yeah.
You know that thing that everybody's talking about these days?
Right.
We've got excerpts from the book Surrounded by Narcissists.
Go.
And we're going to extract the need to know info, the kind that helps you spot those red flags in real life.
Yeah.
Maybe even understand your own tendencies a little bit better.
And you might be surprised to learn that narcissism isn't always just about that
Right.
loud, attention-grabbing person in the room.
Yeah.
It's woven into our culture in ways you might not even expect.
Right. The book opens with this stat that blew my mind.
Okay?
Google searches for how to love yourself have hit nearly 2.5 billion results.
Wow.
You have to wonder,
Uh-huh.
has our quest for self-love
Right.
gone a little overboard?
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
And the book does a good job separating having some narcissistic tendencies
Okay.
from actually having narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD,
Yeah.
which is a clinical diagnosis.
Okay, so we're not pathologizing everyone who enjoys a selfie.
Yeah.
But the book outlines some specific traits
Mm-hmm.
that really define a narcissist.
Yeah.
What are some of those that jumped out at you?
Well, the inflated self-image is a classic one.
Mm-hmm.
They often overestimate their abilities and accomplishments.
Right.
But what's interesting is that not all narcissists are outwardly successful.
Hold on. Really?
Yeah.
I always picture narcissists as super confident
Right.
on top of everything.
It's a common misconception.
Yeah.
The book actually points out that some narcissists see themselves as failures
Huh.
because they believe the world is treating them unfairly.
Wow.
It's like this strange mix of an overblown ego and a victim complex.
So it's more about how they view themselves,
Yeah.
not necessarily their actual achievements.
Exactly.
I guess that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
all about that internal narrative.
Yeah, and here's another thing that surprised me.
Okay.
The book talks about how narcissists might actually seek therapy, but for the wrong reasons.
Oh.
It's not about genuine self-improvement.
Okay.
It's about getting validation from the therapist.
Ah. So it's more about feeding the ego
Yeah.
than actually confronting any issues.
Exactly.
That's pretty revealing.
And this ties into another key trait.
Okay.
Narcissists often feel like the rules don't apply to them.
Right.
They have this sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
Like they're special and can break societal norms because of it.
So how does that play out in, say, everyday life?
Think of it this way.
Yeah.
You might encounter someone who constantly bends the rules or expects special treatment,
Mm-hmm.
justifying it with their self-perceived importance.
Right.
That could be a sign of this narcissistic entitlement in action.
Okay. That's starting to paint a clearer picture.
Yeah.
So we've got the inflated ego,
Right.
the need for validation,
Mhm.
the bending of rules.
Yep.
But the book also asks this provocative question.
Okay.
Could there be any unexpected benefits
Interesting.
to being a narcissist?
That's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
The book suggests that in certain situations,
Okay.
those dialed-up narcissistic traits
Yeah.
could actually be helpful.
Really?
For instance, think about the workplace.
Okay.
A bit of that I'm the best attitude,
Yeah.
even if it borders on arrogance,
Mm-hmm.
might help you get noticed or even climb the ladder.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
In a competitive environment,
Right.
maybe a little bit of that self-assuredness can be advantageous.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we know when it crosses the line
Yeah.
from healthy confidence to full-blown narcissism?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something we can keep in mind as we go deeper into the material.
Right.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Absolutely. But the book doesn't stop at individual narcissism.
Uh-huh.
It introduces this idea of narcissistic culture,
Yeah.
where these behaviors become pervasive in society.
Right.
What are some examples of this that really stood out?
Well, social media is a prime example.
Okay.
The constant curating of a perfect online persona,
Mm-hmm.
seeking validation through likes and followers.
Right.
It's like everyone's trying to be an influencer these days.
It's true. It's almost become second nature
Yeah.
to present this idealized version of ourselves online.
Right.
And it's not just social media, is it?
No, it's not.
The book had some other surprising examples.
Yes. It even talks about how car designs
Okay.
have become increasingly aggressive,
Really?
reflecting a more individualistic me-first mentality.
No, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder,
Mm.
are cars literally becoming more narcissistic?
Right.
That's a pretty wild thought.
It is. And then there's the shift in parenting styles,
Okay.
where children are constantly told they're special
Yeah.
and often shielded from challenges.
Right.
The book raises questions about whether this overvaluation
Mm-hmm.
might unintentionally be enabling narcissistic tendencies.
So it's like we're creating this perfect storm
Yeah.
for narcissism to thrive in, both on an individual level and within our culture as a whole.
Exactly. And that's why understanding these dynamics is so important.
Right.
It helps us navigate this world with a bit more awareness and self-protection.
Okay. So we've started to define the narcissist
Yeah.
and seen how this narcissistic culture plays out.
Right.
But the book also delves into the manipulative tactics they use,
Okay.
like love bombing.
Yes.
What is that exactly?
Love bombing is a classic manipulation tactic.
Okay.
It's all about showering someone with affection and attention to gain control.
Wow.
Almost like a whirlwind romance designed to sweep you off your feet.
But there's a darker side to it, right?
Absolutely. The book gives some insightful examples
Okay.
of common narcissist phrases
Yeah.
and their hidden translations.
Oh.
Like if someone says, let's be friends, they might actually mean lower your expectations while I look for someone better.
Ouch. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
So how can we protect ourselves from falling for this kind of manipulation?
The key is to trust your gut
Okay.
and set clear boundaries from the beginning.
Right.
If someone is coming on too strong too soon,
Yeah.
it's a good idea to proceed with caution.
Okay.
Pay attention to their actions, not just their words.
Okay. Solid advice.
Yeah.
And speaking of different ways people can be susceptible to manipulation,
Right.
the book introduces the DISC model.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a bit?
The DISC model categorizes behavior into 4 types:
Okay.
dominance,
Uh-huh.
influence,
Mm-hmm.
steadiness,
Yeah.
and compliance.
Okay.
What's interesting is that narcissists can be quite skilled
Okay.
at identifying and exploiting the vulnerabilities of each type.
So it's like they're reading your personality and tailoring their tactics accordingly.
Yeah.
That's a little unsettling.
It can be.
Yeah.
For example, someone who's more dominant
Okay.
might be drawn to a narcissist's confidence and assertiveness, while someone more compliant might be more likely to give in to their demands.
So it's all about knowing yourself,
Yeah.
understanding your own strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
and being aware of how they could be exploited.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about arming yourself with knowledge
Yeah.
so you can navigate those complex interpersonal dynamics.
It really is fascinating how much our personalities factor into these interactions.
Yeah.
And the book doesn't just stop at love bombing. It
Well,
gets into other manipulative tactics narcissists use.
Wait.
Things like gaslighting, which is pretty intense.
Gaslighting is a whole other level of manipulation.
Yeah.
It's about making someone doubt their own sanity
Wow.
and perceptions, making them question their version of reality.
I've definitely heard that term thrown around a lot lately.
Yeah.
But can you give an example of what gaslighting might look like
Okay.
in a real-life situation?
Imagine you ask your partner why they didn't go golfing with their friends,
Okay.
like they said they would. They might look at you completely bewildered and deny ever making those plans,
Wow.
leaving you feeling confused
Yeah.
and questioning your own memory.
That would be so disorienting.
Like
It's
it-
like they're erasing reality and creating a new one
Yeah,
where they're always right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the book highlights that gaslighting is a deliberate tactic
Okay.
to keep the victim off balance and maintain control. It's about undermining their confidence
Right.
and making them dependent on the narcissist for validation.
Wow. That's some seriously manipulative behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen how narcissistic tendencies can play out on an individual level
Right.
and with these specific tactics.
Mm.
But how does this translate to groups?
Okay.
The book talks about collective narcissism.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Collective narcissism is basically when those traits of grandiosity,
Okay.
need for admiration, and lack of empathy get applied to a group identity.
Okay.
So instead of I'm superior, it becomes we're superior.
Ah. So it's like individual narcissism on a larger scale
Exactly.
with a whole group exhibiting those same patterns.
Right.
How does that manifest in the real world?
One way is through an oversensitivity to criticism
Okay.
and a quickness to take offense.
Right.
The book gives the example of how certain groups react to media coverage, demanding apologies for perceived slights, even if no harm was intended.
It's like everything becomes a potential trigger.
Right.
And there's this constant search for reasons to be outraged.
Right. And the book argues that this creates a culture of fear and silence.
Wow.
Where people are afraid to speak their minds or challenge the group's narrative.
That's pretty scary.
It is.
So how does this collective narcissism develop in the first place?
There are a few theories.
Okay.
One is that it arises from a perceived threat to the group's identity or status.
Okay.
If they feel marginalized or ignored, they might overcompensate by becoming more assertive and defensive.
So it's like they're overcompensating for a lack of recognition by inflating their own importance.
Yeah.
It seems like social media could exacerbate that.
Right.
With groups forming these echo chambers that reinforce their beliefs and biases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Social media can definitely play a role.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught in those echo chambers where you're only exposed to information that confirms your existing views.
Yeah.
Making it harder to consider alternative perspectives.
It's like they're trapped in their own bubble, further fueling that sense of superiority and righteousness.
Right.
The book also suggests that collective narcissism can provide individuals with a sense of belonging and purpose.
That's another important point. If someone feels lost or insignificant on their own, identifying with a group that makes them feel special and important can be very appealing, even if that group's ideology is based on a distorted view of reality.
So we've seen how narcissism can manifest, both individually and collectively. But what about the potential consequences? What happens when these tendencies start to dominate our culture?
One concern is a decline in empathy and compassion.
Okay.
If everyone's so focused on themselves and their own needs, it becomes much harder to connect with others on a deeper level.
It's like we lose that sense of shared humanity and responsibility to each other.
Exactly. This can lead to a more individualistic and less cooperative society.
Yeah.
Where people are less likely to help each other out or work together for the common good.
Yeah.
It can impact everything from personal relationships to how we address global issues like climate change.
That's a sobering thought.
It is.
So knowing all of this, what can we do about it? How do we push back against these negative trends?
The book thankfully provides some practical advice and actionable steps.
Okay.
It all starts with focusing on ourselves and cultivating self-awareness.
So before we try to change the world?
We need to start by looking inward and understanding our own tendencies.
It's about being honest with ourselves.
Okay.
About our capacity for self-centeredness.
Right.
And how that might be affecting our interactions with others.
That's a valuable reminder.
Yeah.
We all have those tendencies to some degree. And acknowledging them is the first step towards growth.
Right.
But how do we move from self-awareness to actually cultivating empathy and compassion?
The book suggests actively seeking out diverse perspectives and challenging our own assumptions. Instead of surrounding ourselves with people who always agree with us, we should intentionally engage with those who hold different viewpoints.
That makes sense. It's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers. And being open to learning from others.
It's about understanding that our own perspective is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
So it's not about everyone agreeing with each other?
It's about respecting each other's viewpoints. And being willing to have open and honest conversations, even when those conversations are difficult.
Exactly.
But what about on a larger scale? How can we shift the culture away from this focus on me and towards a more compassionate we?
The book highlights the importance of promoting a culture of humility and service. We need to shift the focus from individual gain to collective well-being, recognizing that we're all interconnected. And have a responsibility to each other.
So it's about prioritizing kindness, generosity, and collaboration, and encouraging people to contribute to something bigger than themselves.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be about grand gestures. We can start by making small changes in our own lives. Like volunteering our time, supporting causes we believe in, and simply being more mindful of how our actions impact others.
It's about putting those values of empathy and compassion into action in our daily lives. I love that.
The book also delves into some interesting philosophical territory, challenging the idea that self-esteem is always a positive thing.
It suggests that when self-esteem becomes inflated or unearned, it can actually lead to narcissistic tendencies.
So instead of motivating us to become better versions of ourselves, it can make us more self-centered and less willing to see our own flaws.
Exactly. The book argues that true self-worth comes from genuine accomplishments and contributions, not from simply telling ourselves how great we are.
It's about backing up that self-belief with real actions and a sense of purpose.
It's about aligning your actions with your values and striving to make a positive impact on the world.
It's not just about feeling good about yourself.
Right.
It's about doing good for others.
Exactly.
But let's be realistic.
Yeah.
Even with all this knowledge, narcissists aren't going to just disappear from our lives.
Right.
The book does offer some advice.
On how to deal with them directly, right?
Absolutely. It has a whole section on breaking free from narcissists.
Okay.
And recognizing their manipulation tactics.
Right.
One of the key points is to learn how to identify those patterns of manipulation.
Because if you don't know what to look for,
right,
you can easily get caught in their games.
Exactly. The book gives some great examples of how to spot those red flags.
Yeah.
Like narcissists often use phrases that sound caring, but are actually designed to control or manipulate you.
Like those classic non-apologies. I'm sorry you feel that way.
Exactly.
But they don't actually care how you feel.
Precisely. It's all about deflecting responsibility.
Right.
And making you question your own emotions.
So paying attention to their actions, not just their words, is crucial.
Absolutely. And another important piece of advice is to set clear boundaries.
Because narcissists love to push those boundaries and see how far they can go.
Exactly. And if you don't stand your ground, they'll just keep taking more and more.
So it's about being assertive.
And clearly communicating what you will and will not tolerate.
Right.
But what if you're already in a relationship with a narcissist?
Okay.
Is there any hope of changing them?
The book is realistic about the challenges of changing a narcissist.
Okay.
It emphasizes that they're often resistant to therapy
Yeah.
and unwilling to acknowledge their flaws.
So trying to change them is probably not a winning strategy.
In most cases, yes.
Right.
The book suggests that the best course of action is to protect yourself and prioritize your own well-being.
So accepting that you can't change them.
Right.
And focusing on what you can control.
Yeah.
Which is your own actions and reactions.
Exactly. And sometimes the healthiest choice is to walk away from the relationship altogether.
That can be a tough decision.
It can.
But sometimes it's necessary for your own mental and emotional health.
Absolutely. The book acknowledges that breaking free from a narcissist can be incredibly difficult.
Right.
Especially if you've been subjected to their manipulation for a long time. It's like you've been conditioned to doubt yourself.
Yeah.
And question your own reality.
Right. And that's why it's so important to seek support.
Okay.
From trusted friends, family, or even a therapist. Having that outside perspective can help you regain your sense of self.
Right.
And rebuild your confidence.
Because it's easy to feel isolated and alone when you're dealing with a narcissist.
Yeah.
But the book ultimately offers a message of hope and empowerment, right?
It does. It emphasizes that we have the power to choose how we respond to narcissists.
Okay.
And that we don't have to be victims of their manipulation.
So it's about taking back control.
Right.
And recognizing our own agency in these situations.
Exactly. And the book provides a step-by-step system for breaking free from a narcissist.
Yeah.
Which includes practical strategies for setting boundaries, communicating effectively, and protecting yourself from their manipulations.
It's like a toolkit for reclaiming your power.
Yeah.
And rebuilding your life after narcissistic abuse.
The book also encourages us to look beyond the individual.
Yeah.
And consider the broader impact of narcissistic culture.
Right.
Asking us to reflect on how we might be unintentionally contributing to these negative trends.
So it's not just about pointing fingers at narcissists.
Right.
But also recognizing our own role.
Exactly.
In perpetuating this culture.
Precisely. And the book challenges us to think about how we can create a more compassionate and empathetic world where people are valued for their genuine contributions.
Right.
Not just their superficial appearances or accomplishments.
Well, after this deep dive into narcissism, I think it's safe to say we've all learned a lot.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most important takeaway from all of this?
For me, it's the reminder that while we can't change other people, we can change how we choose to interact with them. We have the power to set boundaries, protect ourselves from manipulation, and prioritize our own well-being.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And it's a good reminder that even in a world where narcissistic behavior seems to be on the rise, we don't have to succumb to it.
Right.
We can choose to live differently.
And the book really pushes us to think critically about how we define success and self-worth.
Right, right.
Are we chasing external validation? Or are we building a foundation of genuine confidence and fulfillment?
That's a great question for all of us to ponder.
It is.
As we resurface from this deep dive into narcissism, I think the most important thing is to take what we've learned and apply it to our own lives.
Be mindful of those red flags. Set those boundaries. And most importantly, be good to one another out there.
That's a perfect note to end on.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep.